Ani Zonneveld is the founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values, a human rights group. She joins us from Los Angeles. Ani, welcome to our program. Explain to us how Sharia laws aren't exactly laws in the sense that the West might understand. In fact, you recently wrote, Sharia laws is 100% man-made construct. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's not just the non-Muslims that don't understand that. It includes the Muslims themselves. That's why statistically, when Pew and all these international organizations do research on the Muslim mindset, what do you think of Sharia law? Would you like that to be the law of the land? The majority think yes, because they think that's the Islamic thing to do. Sharia law is basically 100% man-made because it was constructed by religious leaders, by politicians of the day, and it's an extrapolation of their understanding of the Quran. Now, if you're a misogynistic politician, you're going to interpret that from your personal prism. And the Sharia law basically is a mashup of that extrapolation understanding of the Quran with the social norms of the day. So, for example, child marriage and female genital mutilation, that's not in the Quran. That has nothing to do with Islam, but that's actually mashed up into Sharia law. And that's why you have Sharia law very different in different Muslim majority countries. And the fact that this was a revision, what happened? Did God come down to the Sharia courts in Brunei all of a sudden and say, oh, no, you need to make this according to my laws, and now you need to stone them. So this is the bastardization of Islam. And the fact that the Sultan is using that as getting closer to Islam is actually furthest from the truth. It's actually a bastardized version of Islam because there's no such thing as stoning in the Quran.
So, Ani, why would Brunei do this now? What's behind it?
Well, I think there's the sweeping extremism in all of the Muslim countries, and it starts from Saudi Arabia, and this has been going on for decades, and I think it's just a matter of Sultan of Brunei catching up to the Saudi regime, and therefore competing as to who is more Islamic than the other. And it's pathetic competition because it is really appalling and runs contradictory to the Quranic teachings. And if you look at Malaysia and Indonesia, you also see the sea of change that's happening in the mindsets of the Muslim population there. I'm originally from Malaysia. I was born in Malaysia, raised in that tradition. And so I'm speaking from someone who comes from that tradition. And so I have a lot of families there, and I see the shift of their mentality from one of egalitarian inclusiveness and pluralism mentality from an Islamic perspective to one that is intolerant and even hateful towards LGBT people and hateful towards religious minorities even.
Are you concerned that this kind of law is going to cause more anti-Muslim feelings in the West? I mean, most people can distinguish between the sort of medieval new penal code and the actual teachings, I should say, of Quran.
Yes, no, absolutely. It just fuels the anti-Islam, anti-Muslim sentiment. And it's, you know, when people talk about Islamophobia, yes, it exists, but it doesn't exist out of a vacuum. It exists because Muslims themselves are feeding that Islamophobia sentiment. So it's very difficult as a progressive Muslim living in the West, challenging the Islamophobes and those that are anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, and those Muslims themselves that are really misogynistic and homophobic and basically not that much different from the Islamophobes themselves. And so that's the position that we're in. But the education is what needs to happen. The educational system in the Muslim world needs to happen. But the state has defined Islam based on state definition. You as a Muslim in the Muslim world are not allowed to define Islam for yourself. And this is the problem. The educational system deters you from critical thinking. And that is actually the root of the problem.
All right, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much, Ani Zonneveld.